I went by to get a cup of coffee at the domestic violence unit in Emporia, Virginia today. It is Tuesday, February 17th of 2026, and I was told before that I could do that, and I haven't done it in at least 2 weeks. And there's a lady there. I asked for her to give me a card with her name, but she did not do that. She gave me a card with someone else's name. She gave me the name of Catherine Turner, which I believe is maybe someone, a supervisor to her, but she is a supervisor. This lady, her name is Cheryl. I don't know her last name. But she is the person who is on medical leave right now, but the person who had been assigned to my case, quote unquote. And one of the people I reached out to in the middle of a snowstorm, I told her where I was, which was at a hotel that is an efficiency hotel that has a very reasonable weekly rate for the hotels, for the way hotels are priced. And I did not see her return email. I was also going through a lot, but I did not see her email for about a week. And when I saw it, it was 1 a.m, and I emailed her right away. I was so sorry I hadn't seen it. And so they had ended up paid for a couple of nights at a different hotel, which is much more expensive, where it's like $80 a night. Where I was calling her from, or emailing her from, was at a hotel that is $310 a week. So they had paid for a couple of nights, and her email was for me to head on over there. That would have been at least an hour-and-a-half walk in heavy snow with toes I already could not feel. So she approached me this morning when I was in their little kitchen coffee area, and I would feel somewhat attacked to me that I had not gotten back with her sooner, and I apologized in the email that I had not seen it, and that I was at a hotel, and that I had gotten other help, and that I hope they were able to recover their money, which she told me they were not. So I am sorry for that, but at the same time, I expressed that maybe there needs to be more forethought for people who are going to be in the elements. And she told me at one point I was not her only, I was not their only client, which of course I know I'm not their only client. Never have I supposed any such thing. But when I did ask her later, how did the other homeless clients of theirs fare, and she said that there were no other homeless clients. So I'm just like, okay, so back to my original line of questioning with her this morning. There could have been more forethought then, because we knew the snowstorm was coming. When I mentioned how their offices closed, a day or two before the snowstorm really hit, that I had come by, but their offices were closed. Then I said, which of course makes sense because there's ice on the road. Then she tried to switch that around and say, well, you just said our offices weren't closed, as if they should have been open. I said, no, I just said your offices were closed, which I understand because there's ice on the road. But as far as me being in the elements, basically in dire need during the snowstorm, there could have been more forethought. But it irks me that she didn't even give me her card with her name. So it's Cheryl, and I almost want to go back over there and just get her information. There's definitely a lack of true caring with a guise of caring. When 8 inches of snow is coming, I don't care if it's just a couple of inches. When temperatures are dropping down to like 12 degrees and you only have one client in your vicinity who is actually homeless living on the street, then don't tell me I'm not your only client. I didn't say I was, nor do I think I am. These are the kind of things that need to change, because, I shouldn't have had to get where I was, once again, close to frostbite to be able to get help. And then because I don't have service on my phone, I don't have any minutes on my phone, I wasn't able to just call any of these people. And I reached out to the lady who was on medical leave, but she had told me before she went on medical leave that I was certainly able to call her anytime I needed to. And I did try to reach out to her, but I had to ask for her to accept me as a WhatsApp person, friend, or whatever, and she never did respond, or I guess she probably blocked me. And so I didn't have any way of actually calling or texting her in a normal fashion. And so this was me huddling in the lobby between the two double doors at the cheap hotel during a snowstorm. And I did take a little bit of footage of how heavy the snow was coming down. And, when you send an email, I mean, obviously email is not normally responded to the way that you would expect maybe a text or a phone call to be responded to much quicker. So, after I emailed that lady, I went on to continue to try to reach out to other people because I was desperate for help that needed to come soon so that I wouldn't freeze. And that's why my original line of questioning with her today, when she kind of came at me accusatorily, that couldn't we have had more forethought then because we knew the snowstorm was coming. So I also had told her where I was, what she said that I didn't. And I said, well, we'll both have to check back at my email that I sent you then, because I certainly did tell you where I was. Because, it's nothing when you have a car, because I know when I had a car, I never thought anything of how much it is to walk, which in the car would maybe be 10 or 15 minutes. But walking, let alone walking in heavy snow, would be, upwards of 2 hours. So, and the numbing in my feet then, I think it really takes being at least camping overnight and the temperature dropping to freezing or something. You're not going to understand unless you've actually been that cold, because we all play outside with our kids and then we come inside after 20 minutes and we're all freezing, but we enter into the heat and the warm and we get something hot to drink. And, so after 5 hours of being out in that snowstorm, doubled up 2 sleeping bags and 5 layers of clothing on, 2 gloves, winter gloves on the outside and fleece lined warmy kind of gloves, softer on the inside, I was shivering, could not feel my toes, my hands and everything, my fingers were so numb, and I had to leave the area that I was at to even try to get a call or email made because I have no service, so I couldn't stay where I was and just pull my phone out. I had to, and there's not somewhere real close, but that's why I went to the hotel in hopes that somebody would help me. So these are the places that the normal person who gives to donate to for domestic violence victims / survivors, this is what it really is on the receiving end. Have these people helped me at all? Yes, they have. Have they helped me? Have they helped me well? No, I don't think they have. I've talked about this before, but at first I was just given a quilt, a very beautiful quilt that ladies in a quilt guild make and donate to them. But I really needed a sleeping bag from the jump. And I have had frostbite on both feet. My toes discolored to blue and really awful looking, and then white, and then they blistered all over, and the blisters popped and healed. And this was from the first 4 days just not having anything like the appropriate things. And when they had given me the quilt, I commented on how beautifully crafted it was, but I asked, did they not have something that was more along the lines of polyester, or something that was, as much as I love natural fiber, something that was synthetic, because I knew it needed to be something synthetic to create more of a barrier between the elements and myself. And that and a shower liner, and there was only one shower liner that just happened to be in their little closet, and I asked if I could please have it because I was thinking along the lines of waterproof, and I was being just given the quilt, and she was like, oh, well, this is all we have, and they have a whole lot of them, and they're beautiful, but they're not what someone who's going to be living outside needs. Not at all. And these are the kind of things, so after the first 4 days and I was experiencing the frostbite on my feet, I had walked into town and asked, could they please, I was desperate for someone to please buy me a sleeping bag. And they did, and I appreciate that. And actually, they bought me a 2-pack, and even though at first I didn't think I needed a 2-pack, and I would have rather had a tarp and a sleeping bag, I was later glad that I had 2, because I have needed 2, because even though the sleeping bag from Walmart says it's good for temperatures down into 10 degrees, that's really not true. And even with 2 doubled up, it's still not good enough for that temperature. And I understand they don't get this kind of snow and stuff here every winter. So if this was Michigan, they probably would have something set up for the homeless. They would have some kind of a warming shelter or something. But seeing that I am their only client that is truly homeless out in the elements, they could have done something prophylactically and not let me just start freezing and be in more of a desperate. But it was the way that she came at me this morning. And I am apologetic that they lost the couple of nights fee, that, and it wasn't actually them, it was a different supporter that paid for that. But I'm not trying to waste anyone's money. But that's why I told her where I was. I really couldn't have walked that far with the numbing I was already experiencing. And, you know, I say these things just because there needs to be some awareness. And until I went through this, there was no way in the world. I thought I could actually leave with my children and find a domestic abuse shelter to house me and my children for, you know, many months, maybe 6 months or more, until I could get work, get them in school, and somehow get into some kind of program with, you know, reduced housing so that I could keep working like that, like going, doing, trying, just to barely scrape by, which is what our slave society is all about. And what they normally do here in Emporia, Virginia, the person over my case told me what they normally do is just they're usually pay for 2 nights at a hotel, and she said most people end up returning to their partner. But I'm like, well, don't you think those things are related? Because if you only normally pay for 2 nights at a hotel, what is that? How could someone flee? Especially if there's someone who's been a housewife or is in any way has been financially dependent, even dependent, like where you both partners are working and you can't make it on your own, let alone children. I've had to leave my children and I have not wanted to, and they're not safe. This is not right. And their funding would be cut if the people who donate to such places, and this is not just in Emporia, Virginia, this is all over, this is a nationwide problem, the people would maybe not donate, and we would learn to have something better set up to truly help more people, because the domestic violence shelters stay full, the homeless shelters stay full, and I don't qualify for either. I don't qualify for the homeless shelters if I mention that I'm a domestic abuse survivor, and I don't qualify for the domestic abuse shelters because it's been too many weeks since I've been raped. That's a bunch of bullshit. One thing that's going to be coming out when, at some point, once my story is released and the government one by one comes down, it will also be made known to the public that the kinds of facilities that were set up to help the victim of, let's say, abuse, domestic violence, or services to help children were actually part of, I'm not saying every single one in every single town, but by and large were used as a decoy. For example, the Mennonites were able to adopt a boy who had a father, but the father was labeled incompetent. The father was fighting for his son. He did not want to give up custody. And of course, I don't know them and don't know I didn't know the father, and I only knew the Mennonite side. But knowing now what the Mennonites partake in, I remember asking the Mennonite mother, the adoptive mother, well, what about the father? Because the mother had, I think, died. Their birth mother had died. And she said, well, the judge saw how well he was doing in our care and basically just kind of like took away the father's rights. I don't know. I don't have evidence and proof, but I do know that Spirit is telling me that these things that look like they should be help are actually part of the corruption. I do know, just in my heart and in my gut, which I feel that I'm very perceptive, the lady today, in the guise of care, that doesn't. And that was very obvious. I could feel I could feel her like animosity, possibly anger. But when someone comes at you in a way that makes you feel like you need to defend yourself, that you gave these details in this email, and you know, it's quite not, it's quite the opposite of caring, the way that she came at me. And I still spoke with her, and then as I was leaving, our conversation, turned somewhat more on the pleasant side. I felt like it was, at best, a phoniness, but it kind of had me feeling somewhat the way that my ex would, kind of come at me as if I've done something wrong. And it's like, well, I was the one freezing and reaching out for help and unable to find help, at least as I was reaching out for it. And, we knew the storm was coming. But much bigger than that, in this little incident today, that parking lot, for example, is full of cars, and those cars represent people that are there with jobs, that have salaries. And I'm their only homeless client right now in this city. But they have jobs, and they're doing what? The sign says family violence. What does it say? Family violence. I took a picture of it. I'll have to put that on this video. All I'm speculating is that they do something different than what you might think. I don't know what all those people who have employment there are doing every single day. I know that somebody who has and is still being abused, because I'm being financially abused, and that's setting aside the whole thing with the government. When this is a government thing. That's what I'm saying. That's what I feel like. There's a larger problem that's kind of going under the radar. I know that it'll take my story coming out, and even the details in my own story that I can only speculate on or know somewhat intuitively, and not truly know the actual details and their evidences. I just know that something is fishy and something doesn't sit right. And I've learned to trust myself. It doesn't mean that I'm perfect. I wish I had checked my email sooner, but I did email her as soon as I saw the email directing me to the couple nights they had paid for. And I just feel, if they really care, like, no one really cares. She mentioned the rain, and I mentioned, yes, that it certainly has been difficult trying to stay dry. And of course, if we're not dry, that affects how cold we are. And it's not snowing and things, so it's been okay. But I definitely had soaking sleeping bags, and the quilt underneath me was soaked. And when I mentioned, though, just in our light conversation as I was going to the door, she was walking me out, as I mentioned, like, the difficulty of keeping dry, her face and the way that she was, well, yes, it's all very, like, there isn't really anything like, oh, well, do you not have what you need? Because honestly, if it would just be, 20 degrees cooler, that wetness could definitely cause a risk, as far as, obviously things that are wet don't keep you very dry, right? But when we're wet, we're more susceptible to being harmed by cold. So yes, hopefully the winter storms are over for this year and spring is around the corner. I also know this is not my forever, and I'm manifesting a crystalline, beautiful, new start. And I'm being told it's so much bigger than what I even anticipate. And I know I'm very well deserving of everything beautiful. And I definitely have the leadership skills and gumption, inner drive, and creativity to affect positively many, many people. I also have very much love and compassion, and I guess that's what I'm able to pick up on when it's lacking towards me. And these places that make their money from, donations to help people in a certain situation should do more of the things they claim to do. I know at that building, I know that they work with like children, testing children. Like if a claim was made that someone was harming a child, they could be a place where a child would be, kind of like observed in case they would want to disclose some inappropriate behavior or something like that. But there are many, many, many people who work there, many vehicles there. When they're not closed for the snow or something, there's many, many people who have a salary who work there. And yet I almost feel like I'm a nuisance to them. And I won't go back by there for coffee. There's some kind of a disconnect for sure, what they claim to do and what they really do. And honestly, I asked Spirit earlier, in general, not just those people, but why do people get involved in certain kinds of fields if they don't really care about the people that they would be helping? Or, the kind of jobs where you're supposed to be helping a certain kind of person, like domestic violence, right? And the answer came immediately, and it was to feed off of them. And I was like, okay, I wasn't expecting that answer. Now, of course, I'm not in any way trying to say that I know that's what those people are doing. Do I think many of them, at least, are actually part of this secret society and actually vampires? Certainly I do. So really, things go darker and deeper than, and I've already said that on another video. The lady who was assigned to my case, I'm fairly confident it was disclosed to me early on that she was one of them. Of course, I have no proof, and so I'm not saying this lady by this name is this and this and this. I can only speculate. But when someone, just kind of comes at you in a very accusatory way, and yet that's supposed to be care, you're supposedly concerned for me, it doesn't feel like concern. We needed to really start seeing things for what they are. And when someone comes at us and it doesn't at all feel like concern, I think we can trust that it isn't really concern. I was taken back by the way she came towards me, and maybe suppressed anger, but the way that she came towards me, the way that she wasn't happy. And it wasn't anything about caring about me. If we care for people, I think that that's another thing that is sure to be felt. It doesn't mean like with our children or just ever that we won't have something that we need to say that might not be all cheery and a cup of hot tea, but yet, especially among adults, I think If these people cared for me, I would feel it very much. Today is Tuesday, February 3rd. Still snow on the ground. I wasn't sure if the Family Violence and Sexual Assault Unit would be open, but it looks like they are, because when they're not, there's the white car they use as a community car and this broken down tan one here, but there are at least several people working here today. But yet, my emails have been ignored, my calls have been ignored. On Saturday, I left messages with 2 different people who work here about being freezing and not being able to feel my toes and fingers, and they haven't so much as emailed me back or anything.